Okay, is taken from the 17th chapter, beginning with the 8th verse of St. Luke.
Pastor, can you speak a little louder?
They can't hear on Zoom.
On the way to Jerusalem, Jesus was going through the region between Samaria and Galilee. As he entered the village, 10 lepers approached him, keeping their distance. They called out, "Jesus, Master, have mercy on us, please." When he saw them, he said to them, "Go and show yourselves to the priests." And as they went, they were made clean. Then one of them, when he saw that he was healed, turned back, praising God with a loud voice. He prostrated himself at Jesus' feet and thanked him. And he was a Samaritan. Then Jesus asked, "Were not 10 made clean? But the other 9, where are they? Was none of them found to return to give praise to God except for this foreigner?" Then he said to him, "Get up and go your way. Your faith has made you well." Here ends our gospel for today.
Praise you, Christ.
You may be seated. One of my favorite places in the whole world is the ocean. I love to go to the shore. I worked at the shore for 4.5 summers, so I could be there. And I was at one of my favorite places in all the earth, Cape May, New Jersey. And so in my very first church and the churches I served with a youth group, if we had retreats during the year or confirmation class, we would always go with Pastor Fox to sleep on the floor of the church in Cape May. And one of our worships always was Holy Communion at what is known as the Point, the end of New Jersey. It comes to a dead end. There's a fence there. Don't go any further because you'll be in trouble. You'll be in the ocean. And it was a beautiful night, that night of that retreat with my teenagers. We actually had some other teenagers come along and join us and sit down while we sang some upbeat Christian hymns of today. And then it was time for communion, and the sun was setting in the background. And the kids were rather transfixed. I was proud of the teenagers. They noticed the beauty of the sun dropping down over the bay, which is just below Cape May. And then all of a sudden, as you saw the orange and the yellow disappearing, all of a sudden the kids are, "Ow! Ooh! Ow! Ooh! Ow! What's going on?" Once it gets cooler, the mosquitoes know where you are. It was horrible. We tore back to the cars and jumped in and slammed the doors and put the windows up. Was I thankful for fleas that day? I don't believe so. I wasn't saying, "Thank you, Lord. Why'd you bring them for my end of the worship?" You know, I guess I should have had more gratitude for the sunset earlier than that, huh? But you know, gratitude is something we learn as Christians, I think, many times. We learn it maybe from an old Sunday school teacher who is gracious himself or herself. And it has nothing to do with consequence. Be people who show gratitude in amazing places when I would just be complaining and moaning and groaning. By the way, I've cleaned up my language for you. Moaning and groaning, there's another expression some of us guys sometimes use. I was thinking of a book that I read some time ago called The Secret Place by Corrie ten Boom. Probably some of you have read the same book.
And in this beautiful book, she talks about the years of her being interred in a prison camp in Germany. Her father was taken away one time by the Gestapo because they had shielded Jews from being picked up in their own home in Holland. He never returned. And whilst in that prison that she was at, she was with her mother who died there and her sister who died there. And yet she writes with this gracious thankfulness that she did have some time with her mother and her sister, got to know others. And you know what she thanked God for in one of the chapters? Fleas. Fleas. She wasn't talking to me. Why? She had a reason for her gratitude and gracious thanksgiving to God for what had been placed in her way. She led for the ladies in her barracks a Bible study, and she kept some ripped out pages from the Bible and 2 or 3 little books, like we have little devotional books. She had those to help with their prayer time. She thanked God for fleas because the guards didn't want to come in their barracks because the fleas would be all over them. But she and the other ladies endured the fleas because it let them talk to God in Christ. 20-some years later, Corrie was asked, as she spoke all around the world, including the United States, all over Europe, certainly. And she was at a church which was filled to hear her witness that night. And she was telling them about her experiences and so forth and so on. And then at the very end, there was applause, and there was a time, a coffee hour to meet her, maybe have her sign your book from her time in that prison camp. And she said there she was with her cup of coffee, and she saw this man just beaming, coming up with his hand extended, saying how much he enjoyed her message. And she said, I was like a piece of ice because I recognized who this man was. He was a guard at that prison where he had beaten her sister into the ground twice in front of all the other people in the barracks. And she was thinking, well, I preach peace, I preach the love of God and forgiveness. And she said, then a weight went off of me. And in gratitude, she said, I stepped forward and shook the man's hand and thanked him for his thanks for my presentation. There is a woman who knows gratitude, who can give thanks even to someone who had almost beaten her dear sister to death in front of all the other women. Gratitude. We just celebrated Thanksgiving. Some of you had something bizarre called turkey. My wife made me an Indian meal. I knew it was good because I started to sweat. And I was looking this week about Thanksgivings and, of course, gratitude. Let me share another story with you. I got a whole bunch of them. I hope you can make it to lunch. But during the 30 Years' War, many refugees got into this one town which was fortified for safety's sake. In fact, it was very overcrowded. This sounds very contemporary, doesn't it? Our fears of COVID and all that stuff as we wear a mask. It reminds us of what's going on in the world around us. Well, an epidemic got inside of that walled city, and people were dying daily. One day, he actually did 40 memorials. prayers for individuals who died the day before. Leaders of the town, including the mayor and 2 or 3 other clergy that were packed into this city, this walled city, left town. Martin Ringert did not. He felt moved to witness the love of God to these dear souls who were dying daily. In the midst of this crisis, of course, it struck his own home as his wife died, and he had to do her shortened eulogy along with everyone else. His duty, he said, was to serve God and to thank him for those lives now gone from us to be with the Lord. Would you believe that this is the author, Martin Ringert, of the hymn, "Now Thank We All Our God with Heart and Hands and Voices"? That's a Christian who knows gratitude. That's a Christian who knows the gifts that God has given him for a short time or a long time. Has nothing to do with the consequence of anything but his faith. You know, in today's gospel in Luke 17, we have this very real scene. This is not a parable. This is not, a maybe. This is a fact that happened. Christ is going through Galilee, and as he's going there, and he's got them in the outskirts of a town because that's where lepers belong. The rabbis had already told other people the reason why he or she is a leper is because they're sinful, and God has stricken them down. That's why they have this disease. It is such a heinous, horrible thing. We are told that in this disease, you begin to lose all kinds of feeling. Body parts like toes and fingers literally begin to rot and fall off. And no one wants to be around you, not even your family, because they figured you did something that they didn't know about. Jesus, have mercy upon us, the 10 men yell, because they are at a real distance. They have to be. And Jesus stops. What would you like of me? Well, of course, they ask him, we would like to be healed. And he said, go see the priests and say a prayer. Go see the priests, the rabbis, and say a prayer. On the way, they can feel a change all over themselves. They look at their horrible looking hand and it's whole. And it's healthy looking. They are healed on the way. And then comes the part which really hits me quite home. You know the story too, I'm sure. 9 of them go on their way. They got what they wanted. They didn't want Jesus Christ. They didn't want faith. They didn't want to be, there was no gratitude here. They got what they came for. They were well. But one man, Jesus emphasizes an outsider, a Samaritan. One man returns and he falls at Jesus' feet and says one great big thank you. You've given me my life again. Maybe I will rejoin my family again, my village again. That's the gratitude we're talking about. You know, in the ministry, we are privileged to be with many people of all stripe, socially, economically. In my very first church, I had a dear, sweet, elderly, I was younger then, elderly lady who had been a lifelong school teacher. And I remember visiting her humble little house in Colonial Park. And I was rather amazed because recently, my treasurer told me, Pastor Fox, you should go visit this lady. She's our third highest giver. I had a big church in Colonial Park, and there were people that were quite generous. This woman made them look like beginners. Why? Because she had a gratitude for every gift in her life. The children she taught, her friends in church, all these gifts that she had been given. All those gifts. Today, I want us to think about Thanksgiving and think about the gifts that you and I have been given. And it's more than just making a list of, I'm happy, I got a new car, a house. No. I want you to think in terms of one man who came back humbly, and he fell on his knees saying, Jesus, you are the Christ, and you've given me back my life. Every one of us today should know, as we prepare for the coming of Christ in this Advent season, it's time for us to remember, look what I have. Look around you right now, your friends. I know that some of you have known each other for years and years. What a gift are our friends, other men and women and children in our lives, for however long we have them. And we should sing along with Mr. Ringard, Reverend Ringard, now thank we all our God, with heart and hands and voices. Show God every day in your devotion and your kindness and forgiveness that you have a gratitude for every good gift. Amen.